glo dat daar waar jy sit, jy connected is met ons Here, en dat jou hart gereed is en reg is om te hoor wat hy vir my en jou wil leer vandag. Grace and peace van my kant af, ek is baie dankbaar dat jy die diens met ons deel. Ons mense se lewe is gekenmerk deur verhoudings. Ons is in soveel verhoudings, ons is in huweliksverhoudings, in gesinsverhoudings, in familieverhoudings, ons is in vriendskapsverhoudings, ons is in kollegiale verhoudings, verhoudings by ons werk, mense wat saam met ons werk, ons is in verhoudings op die sportveld, ons is in verhoudings met so baie mense, ons is in verhoudings met mense in ons gemeentes en in die kerk in. Maar baie keer in ons verhoudings net, dan kom daar spanning. Ja, daar's baie mooi tye, daar's baie goeie tye, maar dan kom daar tye waar daar spanning is, daar kom tye wat ons so bietjie aan mekaar krap, waar ons so bietjie aan mekaar skaaf, en partykeer is dit nodig dat ons ernstig met mekaar moet gesels. Ongelukkig, dink ek een van die grootste redes hoekom ons so baie keer sukkel in verhoudings, en hoekom verhoudings partykeer opbreek en vernietig word, is juist die gebrek aan kommunikasie, is juist die feit dat so baie keer mense loop met goed binne in hulle, maar hulle nooit die vrymoedigheid het om met die ander persoon daaroor te praat nie. Of die ander kant is, dat ons wel partykeer die goed vir mekaar sê binne in verhoudings, maar ons raak so vinnig offended, ons staan op ons agtervoete, in plaas van om te luister na die ander persoon, val ek die ander persoon aan, maak ek verskonings ensovoorts. En in plaas van dat het ons verhouding moet help, dan doen die gesprek eintlik baie keer meer skade. Die punt is, as ek en jy kan leer om reg met mekaar te kommunikeer oor die goed wat vir ons pla, oor die goed wat partykeer vir ons seer maak, en ons benader dit vanuit 'n raamwerk van ek wil jou nie seer maak nie, en ek wil jou nie bykom nie, maar ek wil graag hê dat ons nader aan mekaar moet kom, nee, dan kan dit so 'n geweldige groot verskil maak. En dit is waaroor vanmôre se boodskap gaan. Vanmôre se boodskap gaan oor hierdie moeilike gesprekke wat ons baie keer met mekaar moet hê. En ons gaan luister na 'n kenner op hierdie terrein. Verlede Sondag het ons geluister na Dr. Henry Cloud, en dit was 'n amazing boodskap. As jy dit gemis het, kyk asseblief daarna. En ons gaan vanmôre weer luister na 'n boodskap van hom. En die boodskap se titel is I am struggling with difficult conversations. En ek dink ek en jy kan aansluiting vind daarbey, want ek dink die meeste van ons struggle baie keer daarmee. En juist daarom ons vermy difficult conversations. Ons vermy daai moeilike gesprekke. Ons raak gespanne as ons net daaraan dink. En partykeer as iemand self wil met ons gesels, dan raak ons geweldig gespanne. En ek dink een van die redes ook daarvoor is, baie keer as ons baie seer gekry het in die verlede, of ons het slegte ervarings van hierdie tipe van goeters, nee, dan maak dit dat ons hierdie goed vermy. En ek dink daar's baie van ons wat eerder sal stil bly, as om honest met iemand te praat en te sê, maar wag so 'n bietjie, weet jy, hier is goed wat nie lekker is nie, kom ons probeer dit regkry, kom ons probeer die verhouding red. En hierdie boodskap, nee, glo ek, kan vir my en jou geweldig baie beteken. Hierdie boodskap het nie net terapeutiese beginsels nie, maar Bybelse beginsels. En ek glo dat die Here vir my en jou wil leer dat wanneer ons in 'n gesprek met mekaar moet ingaan oor goed wat ons dalk pla, dat ons dit op die regte manier en met die regte gesindheid sal doen. Ek dink altyd as ek aan hierdie goed dink, dan dink ek aan wat Jesus sê, dat ons moet altyd eers na die balk in ons eie oog kyk ook, nee, voordat ons die splinter in iemand anders se oë gaan raak sien. En ek dink dis 'n baie goeie beginsel. En as ek en jy vanmôre ter harte gaan neem wat die Here vir ons gaan leer deur hierdie video teaching van Dr. Henry Cloud, glo ek dat die volgende keer wanneer ek en jy in 'n moeilike gesprek gaan wees, het sy dit in ons huwelik is, of in ons gesin, of by ons werk, of in die kerk, of waar ook al, nee, gaan ons dit op 'n ander manier hanteer. En daarom wil ek vir jou sommer net motiveer om regtig elke woord in te neem en dalk sommer net bietjie aantekeninge ook te maak. En ek dink dit is belangrik om nie net sekere goed te vat vir môre wat jy wil hoor en wat jou pas nie, maar om regtig te luister na alles wat Dr. Henry Cloud hierso sê. En dit ter harte te neem, sodat ons dit sal gaan toepas. So kom, voordat ons daarna gaan luister, kom ons sit net so en ons maak ons oë toe. Hemelse Vader, Here Jesus, Heilige Gees, ons sê vir U dankie dat ons in 'n verhouding met U kan wees. En Here Jesus, U het dit vir ons moontlik gemaak dat ons in 'n verhouding met U kan wees. En ons eer U daarvoor. En baie dankie Here dat ten spyte van al die kere wat ons sonde doen, al die kere wat ons U teleurstel, al die kere wat ons die goed doen wat ons nie moet doen nie of wat ons nie wil doen nie, dat U nooit vir ons wegskuif nie. Dat U nooit sê nou is ek klaar met hierdie verhouding en ons een kant toe skuif, soos wat ons baie keer met mekaar maak nie. Baie dankie dat U grace altyd daar is vir ons in hierdie verhouding en dat ons by U kan veilig wees. En my gebed is Here dat ons ook sal leer om veilige mense te wees. Dat ons ook sal leer om mense te wees waar ander mense veilig kan voel en dat ons veilige verhoudings sal. En my gebed vir ons gemeente is dat ons 'n plek sal wees wat veilig is vir mekaar, veilig vir mense is en 'n plek waar ons in veilige verhoudings kan wees. Maar Here, U weet dat baie keer in ons verhoudings dan kom daar goed wat spanning veroorsaak, dan skrap ons aan mekaar, ons is nie perfek nie, ons is nie volmaak nie, en daarom kom daar partykeer hierdie tye in ons verhoudings wat nie lekker is nie. En Here, wie weet dat baie keer vir my ons om te praat daaroor, want ons is bang dat dit meer skade sal doen as goed. Maar U sê vir ons dat wanneer ons regtig openlik en reg met mekaar werk en as ons na onsself eers te kyk en as ons met ander praat, Here, dat daai verhoudings eintlik, dat daai gesprekke vir ons eintlik baie kan beteken. En ek wil vir U dankie sê vir hierdie boodskap waarna ons vanmôre kan luister en ek wil vra dat U dit sal gebruik. En daarom maak ons nou ons harte oop en ons vra Here, praat met ons. Ag en Here, leer ons in Jesus naam. Amen.
Difficult conversations. How many of you love to have difficult conversations? Well, you're an attorney, so whatever. They're hard, right? Because we're stepping into something that is, by definition, is difficult. We're going to go into some of the ways that we know from science and research, and I'm a psychologist by training. And we know from a lot of science, like some of the best ways to do this and some of the worst ways to do it, and as well from the scriptures. And what's always interesting me is how the Bible always validates the science. And we're going to see a few things about what God says about difficult conversations. But I want to give you a little practice here. I want you to turn to the person that you came with, and if you're sitting next to a stranger, it'll even be more fun. And some of you wanted a good pickup line anyway. I know why you come here. Turn to the person next to you that you love and you've come with and look them in the eye and say, I will confront you. Just go, say it. Say it. All right. Now, how hard was that, right? Not hard at all. Here's why I start with that. Because you will. You will. See, I don't know where I heard this first, but it's so true. Our success in life is equal to our ability to confront. Period. Because we're all headed somewhere in everything we do, either in our careers or teams or business deals or in our relationships, and we're going along and we're working towards getting where we want to be. We want greater intimacy and greater deals and greater success, and then we hit an obstacle. That's always true. Always. We're going to hit a conflict. Conflicts are just where two needs that aren't the same collide for the same space. So we hit an obstacle, Now, if we're going to get to here, then we have to confront that obstacle, right? So our success is either going to be defined by the obstacle that we've hit and we stop there and we avoid it, and that's where we are. Tori and I, she's going to kill me for this. I shouldn't say that. You should let you speak for yourself. You know, Tori's that's my wife down here. She's an amazing cook, chef. I mean, she's really into it. And at our house, we are her biggest fan. Yesterday, I got back from a few days on the road, and we were talking about dinner, and she said, "Oh, I've already made some stuff. It's marinating." And I said, "Oh, what is it?" And she described it, and she makes this lemon kind of something chicken. I just hate it. I just don't like it. And I'd been on the road for 4 days, and I've had 2 surgeries in the last year, and I haven't walked for 22 months besides about to right there. And I'm already getting fatter and fatter because I'm not moving. And I've been starving myself for 4 days, and I was kind of looking forward to coming home to eat. And she says we're having this chicken. And I realized, gosh, she makes that a lot. Because the girls like it, and she likes it, and I don't know. And I realized my success in eating is going to be equal to my ability to confront. And no, seriously, I don't know what made me think of this. I mean, how long we've been married? 25 years. I've never told her I hate that chicken. And I just realized I'm going to eat this for the rest of my life if I don't tell her. And so I told her, and we went through my outline of how to have this conversation, and we're still married. So anyway, this is important stuff. This is important stuff. Or you can avoid it. I'm from the South, and a lot of times they're nice down there, right? So they say difficult things this way. Gosh, it's a beautiful dress you've got. Didn't they have it in your size? A little sideways, right? Anyway, it's going to come out. That's why I had you turn to each other and say, I will confront you. Because the reality is that God has made reality and truth as an aggressive force in the universe. It will come out. It will find its way out. It'll find its way out in sarcasm or biting comments, or if we have that obstacle and we don't want to lean into it, we will avoid it, and it'll come out in loss of intimacy or aloneness in a relationship, or not solving a business problem, or not getting the hard feedback we need. So it's going to come out. That's why I wanted you to say, I will confront you. But how we do it is what makes all the difference in the world. Take marriage, for example. Here's what all the marriage research shows, and actually all the business research is the same thing. Every marriage has pretty much the same issues. There's issues over hurt, there's issues over behavior, there's issues over finance, kids, sex, whatever it is. Every marriage has pretty much the same bucket of issues. And here's what all the research shows. The only difference is, or the big difference is, it's not the obstacles and conflicts they have, it's how they handle them, how they get through that obstacle that matters. So we're going to look at a little map today as we go through this. And Gare, I did not ask you, what is the end time on the clock? 12. So 12 on Tuesday, is that right? 12 Tuesday, all right. Here we go. What is a difficult conversation? What is a difficult conversation? Let me give you a definition that came out of years of research at Harvard, and I really like it. I think it speaks to how we feel this. We are, or you, or all of us, we're in a difficult conversation when three things are present. Number one, the stakes are high. What we're talking about actually matters. Okay? Stuff that doesn't matter, it doesn't get that difficult. Whatever. Stakes are high. Number two, the emotions are high. We have strong feelings about what we're talking about. We're either hurt, or we're tired of it, or we have a deep desire for something to happen. It could be positive in, negative in. It could be I've got deep, deep emotions about looking at somebody I love and how they're wrecking their life. And I care about it. And then on the other side, they might not want to hear it. The emotions are high. Stakes are high, emotions are high. And the third one is this: we have different viewpoints on it. We have conflicting needs. We have different opinions. Some of you have seen this in the last year in COVID. I can't tell you. I do a daily call-in show that we started during the lockdown. If you go to Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, you can see it. It's a call-in program. People call in with stuff. I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten over the last year of families that are broken up, have broken up, or can't talk to each other, extended family members, on whether or not you wear a mask or not, whether or not you get a vaccine or not, whether or not you stay indoors or outdoors. High stakes, different perspectives, high emotions. And I have other friends that have very different perspectives on those, and it doesn't break them up. So those are the three things that have to be present. So what does it look like? What does it look like to do it well? And what does it look like when it breaks down? We're going to go into the components of that. But think about this. Let's take marriage or business partners. Nobody ever walked down the aisle to get married and said, I can't wait to get up there and marry this person so we can hate each other and break up one day. That's not the goal, right? It doesn't start that way, but it hits these obstacles that aren't negotiated well. I remember one time they asked Rod Stewart, you guys probably are, y'all don't even know who Rod Stewart is, do you? You're too young. You're like into, other music. Anyway, he's been divorced a bunch, I think. And so they asked him if he was going to get married again. He said, no, I think I'll just find a woman I hate and give her a house. We don't plan it that way, right? But we don't handle it well. So how do we get there? I got called into a situation one time. I work mainly with CEOs and businesses, and it's a really large global company, and they were at that moment where they had just been battling, and it was about to be a hostile takeover, and it would have been really, really ugly. You would have read about it. It was one of those. And so we decided they decided they got to solve this. They got to find a solution. And the main conflict was between the chairman of the board and the CEO. And so they asked me to facilitate it. And so we went off locked ourselves up in a hotel for a weekend to try to work out this conflict. So you got the whole board there. You got the chairman of the board, you got the CEO, and you got the whole board. And so we get into it the first morning, Saturday morning, we get into it. And after about probably almost before lunch of the first half, the chairman looks up at the board and says, ladies and gentlemen, he closes his folder. He says, I'm done here. I'm done. You guys can have it. I can't do this anymore. Stands up, their eyes are like, because this is going to reverberate around the world. And their eyes are like, I didn't know what to do. He starts to walk out. He's walking towards the door. I ran in front of him, and I just sat down on the floor in front of the door. And he looked at me. I think the reason, I just think he thought he was with a crazy person. And he looks at me and I said, will you sit down for a minute? And he's sort of like, when a psychotic is talking to you, you do what they say, right? And so he sits down, and we're literally sitting on the floor. And I looked at him, and I said, what's it like for you when he does what he just did? I pointed to the CEO. What does that feel like? What's that like to be on the other end of that? Very powerful leader. He's sitting there on the floor. And his chin starts to quiver a little bit. And he barely got the words out, and he says, it feels so bad. I said, like what? Help me understand bad. Does I feel invisible? Why am I here? I feel like he tries to make me feel stupid. I feel like what I bring doesn't matter. And all the time, he's kind of fighting back tears, and I said, well, tell me more. And wasn't too long into this, the CEO gets up and walks over and sits down in this little circle. And I turned to him, and he said, may I? And I said, yeah. And he looks at the chairman, and he says, I am so sorry. I would never want to make you feel that way. That's not what I want. I saw that we might have something here. I turned to the board and I said, can you guys leave and go, we'll text you in a little while. I'd like to talk to these two. Within about an hour, we called the board back in, and I said, they have something to share with you. And they stood up and they said, we're fine. We're going to work this out. We got it. Now, what happened in that hour? And what hadn't happened up until that moment that was about to break up a global entity? Basically, and I'm going to unpack a few of the things that happened for a map for us. But basically, they just started to do it God's way. God had a difficult conversation to lean into. The story of God in the Bible with us is that we went to the altar, right? He created the altar. He made us in relationship with him, and it was good. And then there was a breach in that relationship. There was an obstacle to being together forever. There was an obstacle. And what did he do? He didn't avoid it. He didn't just let us all go to hell, stay in misery. It only took about, half a chapter before we started murdering each other. He didn't avoid it. And he didn't come at it with anger and judgment. See, I told you so. I'm right and you're wrong. You can go to hell. Or get with the program. That's not what he did. What he did becomes a map for us of having difficult conversations. And as Philippians 2 puts it, it's in that great kenosis passage. I don't know. I should have written this down. But it's in chapter 2. And it says, in your relationships, he says, have the same mind that was in Christ Jesus. It says, although he was in the form of God, he was God. He did have the right answer. He was right. And he could force his answer if he wanted to. But he said, although the only one that had the right to be that way, he existed in the form of God. He did the opposite. He came down, he sat on the floor. And the first thing he did was he met us where we are. Romans 2 says, it is the kindness of the Lord that leads us to repentance. So let's unpack how that gets there, because what we also know is in his kindness, he didn't say, oh, no big deal. He didn't blow it off. He didn't avoid the conflict. He didn't avoid the hard message either. He didn't avoid getting his needs met. He wasn't codependent. How many of you are codependent? So what are the rest of you, just helpful? Everybody knows what a codependent is, right? Y'all know that word. Somebody right before they die, somebody else's life flashes before their eyes because they really don't have one, because they're enabling everybody else and taking care of everybody else, right? You feel deeply heard right now, don't you? She hit her heart. She goes, oh, finally somebody gets it. God wasn't codependent. He faced into it, but he did it in a way that works. So how do we do it? All right, number one, we're going to a little map here. We got to get ready before we go into it. The worst log jams are the ones that are instantaneously flamed. Somebody gets triggered or somebody gets scared. We have fears that get into this stuff. Fears of abandonment, fears of rejection, fears of not getting what we need. A lot of fears get in the way. First thing we got to do is sit down and have a conversation with ourselves before you go into a difficult one. And I want you to think about a few questions as you're going into a difficult conversation. Prepare this way, like Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. What do you want out of this conversation? How about a few suggestions? I want to end the conversation with a good relationship. I want to end up in a good place with you. I want them to feel cared about. I want them to feel understood. I want to be heard. I want to say what I need to say. And lastly, I want to find a way forward. Now, if you take those questions before you go in to call whoever you're going to call or whatever topic we're going to go discuss with somebody, if you take those questions and then you ask yourself, and in the conversation, would somebody be able to tell from my behavior that that's what I want? And think about that list. I want us to be in a good place with each other. I want you to feel cared about. I want you to feel deeply understood. I want to be understood. I want to be heard and say what I need to say. And I want us to find a way forward. Will they be able to tell from my behavior in the conversation, if somebody asks them, what do they want, that they could tell that from how I'm behaving? That's what the Bible calls fruit. He wants us to look at our fruits. So we start there. And then the other thing is, we got to bleed off the emotions. I don't want you to deny them. Because some of you have got to have some conversations. You've been deeply hurt. And some of the trauma you've been through or hurt in some of these situations is so painful that it's actually going to get in the way of having the conversation in a way that might get to a good outcome. In the book of Hebrews, God says this, make level paths for your feet so that the limb that has been injured or put out of joint can be healed rather than injured further. Can't tell you how many conversations I've seen people go into and there's hurt and they go into the conversation and try to resolve the hurt, and so much more hurt gets created from the conversation than was even brought into it. And so I want you to go into it strong. And sometimes that means getting the log out of our own eye first and saying, what have I contributed here? Can't tell you how many situations I've seen diffused. And somebody starts with, before we talk about this, I just got to tell you, when I look back how I've reacted to you and around this topic and how I've kind of only cared about myself and how I've done this, before we even start, I just want to apologize for that. So let's figure out what have we contributed to making this difficult? That's what Jesus says do first. Okay. Get the log out of our own eye, but also to get healed first. So let's go bleed off the emotion somewhere. We need to go in there kind of having our higher brain working than our pain brain. And then let's start with affirming the person and the relationship and the way we want it to end. We've already made a plan. Let's let them know about that. I'm so glad we're getting to talk because you're so important to me. And I just want us to get through this obstacle so we can be in a better place. That's what I want. I don't think I've ever said this to you. I remember a couple of times when Tori and I hit one of those hard spots, you're both hurt or whatever, and it's kind of one of those moments. And I remember you saying, in one of the most painful moments of it, you looked at me and said, we both want the same thing. It's like it took it away. Thanks. She's going. But when you know from the beginning, we want the same thing here. Now we're on the same side of the issue. Looking at the issue. We're together. So let's start there. And then the next thing, let's stop telling ourselves a story about what they're going to say. I mean, how many times do we do that? Well, I know what you're going to say, but no, you don't. We don't know what they're going to say. It might surprise us. It really might surprise us if we say it in a way we've never said it before. It's like the guy who had the flat tire, driving down the road at night in the country, has a flat tire, and he goes and opens up his trunk to get his jack, and he realizes he doesn't have his jack to fix the tire. And he goes, I don't know, what am I going to do? He looks up, there's a farmhouse up there, and lights on. He said, I'm going to go ask the guy if I can borrow his jack or her jack. And he starts walking and says, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe it. And he's going to think the guy's going to think I'm stupid. He's not even, he's just going to rail on me for waking him up. And so now, I don't even like that guy. He's, what is, he never had a flat? And already we're in this and he gets up and he rings the doorbell, and the farmer comes to the door and he looks at him and goes, just keep your damn jack. See, a lot of times we've already had the conversation before we even get there. We haven't allowed somebody to be known. And then we have to do the next thing. And this is where we get into the science of it. We have to create a space that's safe for somebody's real meaning to come out, for their real heart to come out, for who they are, to a safe no-fly zone. Because usually somebody will share something and we're instantly, well, that's not true, or no, and there's an instant negation. Let me give you 3 verses. It's almost like the person that wrote the Bible understood neuroscience. It's unbelievable. Everything we know from hooking people's brains up in conflict is that when they feel understood, the lizard brain calms down, the fight or flight, the stress hormones, the reactivity, the defensiveness, the stonewalling, all of that stuff starts to go to sleep, and the higher parts of the prefrontal cortex get engaged. Cortisol goes down, goal-oriented neurotransmitters increase. when somebody feels understood and listened to first. James 1 says this, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen." Isn't that funny? Quick. We think of quick as action. Think of listening as waiting till I get to be quick and tell you why you're wrong. Be quick to listen. See it as an activity. Come down from heaven to earth. That's quick to listen. See, that's what God did. He came down to where we are. That's where he started. And listen to what it says after that. Everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That is like all the research all in one sentence. If we start there. Proverbs 25 says that, 20 verse 5, Proverbs chapter 20 verse 5 says, "The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, and the one who has insight draws them out." See, we don't answer quickly and shut some die down. We want to know. We got to get to the root of the problem. Listening does that, and Proverbs 18:13 says, "If one gives an answer before he hears, it is a folly and a shame." Not only does it not work, we look like an idiot. It says, "Fools are quick to give their annoyance." Quickly. I was working on a project one time, merger of a healthcare company they asked me to consult on. I might have shared this story with y'all a long time ago. We're talking about connection. But the new CEO was talking to the new leadership, and it was that first meeting, the two companies were together, and he shared the vision. It was electric in the room. I mean, it was electric. I wanted to go work for him. It was so brilliant. And everybody's excited, and then he takes questions. A woman raises her hand and says, "Yeah, I lead about 3,000 people, and we've been working on this product that the other company has the same product. And I've moved people across the country. I've uprooted careers. We spent all of our money and resources and time for 3 years, and my people are just scared to death about what's going to happen to them." He says, "Well, it's not going to be a problem because," and he gave her a bunch of reasons why it wasn't going to be a problem. She nods, but you could feel the energy leave the room a little bit. Guy over here raised his hand and says, "Yeah, I'm head of sales, and our sales force is always called on hospitals and doctors and clinics, and the new model is much more third-party payer and institutions. And how are you going to morph? What were your thoughts about time frames and morphing for the sales army over to this new strategy?" He says, "Well, it's not going to be a problem because this stuff's going to sell itself. You know, it's so." And he explained to him reality. We walked out, and I could feel it in the room. And we walked out, and he says, we got in the hallway, and he says, "Wasn't that fantastic?" I said, "No. It might be the worst thing I ever sat through." He said, "What?" I said, "It's terrible." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You completely lost them. You completely did not connect with where they were at all." He looks at me and he goes, "That's not true." I said, "Yes, it is. Every time they tried to tell you something, you instantly negated where they were coming from and told them why it wasn't true. You instantly negated it." He said, "No, I didn't." I said, "Shut up. You're doing it to me right now." When we first start with empathy and understanding where somebody is coming from, what their experience is, it creates a space. Neurologically, we can measure this. It creates a space for everything in them to make more space to join in and solve the problem. I was talking about this one day with a leadership audience, and a guy walked up to me afterwards and says, "I'm the head of hostage negotiation for the FBI." He He's the guy that walks into banks with the guy's got the bomb strapped to him and 20 hostages. He says, everything you talked about is our entire training program. See, they don't walk in and say, dude, this is a bad idea. You don't want to blow up a bank. They walk in and say, so what, tell me, I'm Bobby. What's your name? They sent me in here to talk to you. How do we get here today? What's going on? And as Proverbs says, draw it out. So what's going to happen is we're going to start to understand the problem. I remember one night our youngest daughter, Lucy, who, by the way, please go to Lucy Cloud Music. I got to give Lucy a plug. She's got her last song she just put out. She's just started putting her music out, and she's got over 1 million streams on her last song. It's called Crash and Learn. And see, Lucy, she's not going to watch this. She'll never even know I told you this. Anyway, check her out. She's great. Well, I was like, but when she's 19 now. When she was about 7, she's struggling with her math, and it's not going well, and I'm trying to make her, I think she's lazy, right? That's what I thought. And she'd rather sing than do math. She's kind of putting it off. And so one night I go, Lucy, we're doing your math homework. We got to get this right. And I wrote this book called Boundaries, where I'm going to have some here. And she's kind of tired. No, I want to go to bed. No, Lucy, I've got all night. Do it. And she starts kind of doing, and then no, I'm tired. And then she's crying. And we're in this kind of, and I'm pushing her. And I said, Lucy, I have all night. Okay? If you want to go to bed, then I'd get to work if I were you. I got all night, and we're in this thing. I said, now do it. Start working the problem. So she starts to work. And I notice every now and then she'd do this little flinch. And I said, keep working. And she'd do this little flinch, and then she'd write something down, and I noticed something. Every time she flinched and just wrote something down real quickly, and just every time she flinched, it had to do with a 6. I said, Lucy, what's 6 times 4? She didn't know. I said, what's 7 times 5? 35. What's 4 times 8? 32. What's 6 times 5? I said, Lucy, I'm sorry. Let's not do this. Let's go watch The Bourne Ultimatum or something we do together. I said, we're going to do something different tomorrow. We're going to play a game. She goes, okay. We played a game. We got some flashcards and learned her 6s. See, sometimes we don't know what's underneath somebody's jam. There might be a need. There may be some hurt. So we're going to start with listening. And we're going to start with getting ready. Then we're going to go to listening. And then the next thing is, I'm going to give you a formula here. There's 3 components in this next step. Make sure you have heard the content, the feelings, and the consequences of the other person's position in this shared space, this no-fly zone of meaning, that you've made a space where it can all come out, where we have the content, the feelings, and the consequences, and make sure that you tell them that. So what I hear you saying is, when I do this, it's really depressing to you and frustrating, and you end up being behind on everything else you got to do. So you want to see that moment where they're starting leaning in. Yeah, you get it. But to get it, all 3 are important. The content. Did I hear you in what it is that you need or what you want or what I'm doing? A. B. Did I hear you in how it feels to you to be on the other end of that? You're just sitting there longing for this to happen, or you're sitting there with some pain I'm creating. And am I understanding how that affects your life? See, when people know that we know what the issue is, how it feels to us, and how it affects us, now we're starting to get somewhere. But don't be codependent. This is a shared meaning space. And we can say, so here's what's going on for me. When this happens, or I don't get this, or you do that, or whatever, I start to feel whatever it is, and then I end up feeling further away from you, or I end up discouraged. See, we want to be able to say our 3 too, but notice what I didn't do. I wasn't accusing and blaming and attacking in that sentence. I'm saying this is the issue. Here's where it leaves me feeling, and here's where it leaves me in life, in our relationship. We get those 3 components, a lot has happened. A lot's happened. Because now we got something to work with. So when they tell me what they feel, what I do, and what they feel, and how it affects them, immediately find something in there that you can be an advocate for. Remember my CEO, or what he did? He came over to the chairman, and what's the first thing he did? He became an advocate for, gosh, I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want to affect you that way. See, there's something in what they shared. If we understand the content, the feelings, and the consequences, there's something in what they've shared that we can be for, and we join that. I don't want you to feel that way. I remember I was working with 2 departments battling. We got to have the management meeting at 10 o'clock on Wednesday. No, it's got to be on Thursday. No, it's got to be on Wednesday. And they're jamming up, in this tug of war. Well, until they started listening, they don't know what the tug of war is really about, because we get stuck on positions and we argue about our position and our solution and our what we want. This has to happen. But what we are really arguing about is not our position, but our interests. The need that's driving that. And so I got them listening to one another. Well, what happens if you have it on Wednesday? Well, then it screws up our whole sequence of planning and being able to know when, on a critical path of getting the project done that week, we need to know when to release our resources, and it's got to be. So what you're really saying is you need to have some control over the decision, so you can plan a lot of things in the critical path. You need to be in control of this. Exactly. We can't just have it dropped on us. Okay, well, let's figure out how you can be the one that leads the decision, and then we can see if that works for the other side. Boom, problem solved. It's not about the dollars you're going to spend in your budget. It's about the needs that it meets for each one of the spouses, or the kid, or the boss. So find something you can advocate for, and then go to this next step. This is, I can't tell you how huge this is. When you hear, okay, so what I'm hearing, what's really important to you is this. What's really important to me is this. Tell me how you think we can make that happen. Tell me how you think we can make that happen. And then they sit back and, well, I think, well, there's a good step. I think. See, what have you done? In the middle of a conflict, you've engaged the part of them that can solve a problem, and they're starting to think instead of defend or whatever it is that's emotional and reactive and pain. See, when you say, help, let's figure out a way, how could we get there? What's a way we could do this? Now you have engaged them to be your partner, your ally against what? Against the problem. So now we're on the same side of the table, and the problem is on the other side, and we're together looking at this log jam. with conflicting needs. And we're going to work together. What did God say? Come, let us reason together. That's what God said. There's a log jam. And when we can engage each other as allies, because we both want the same thing, we have different perspectives on how to get there. But let's solve this problem. Now, not only have we further helped both of our brain functionings, but we become allies. And then the last thing is this. Have I said it all? It's easy to fudge on what some friends of mine call the last 10%. You know, a lot of times we ask for feedback and, so, oh yeah, it's good. Oh yeah, give me the last 10%. Well, it sucked, you know. Now, a lot of times, it's just hard for us to come out with the stuff that we might fear saying, fear we're going to hurt somebody's feelings or whatever. When you ask, I want to make sure you've said it all. Is there anything left? Give me the last 10%. And then we have to step in and say the last 10%, unless we don't. And this time, not out of fear, but out of strategy. You will be in some conversations in your life that if you follow the formula that I just gave you, it will be diagnostic. It'll be like a lab test. You have just determined if you have a snowball's chance in hell of getting to a good outcome. You may be talking to what Proverbs refers to as a fool, a mocker, somebody doesn't want to get to an answer, or even somebody that's evil and wants to destroy you. But you won't know until we've done everything possible to bring out the higher, transcendent mission, alliances, character, care, love. When we've done everything. See, that's what God did. God didn't withdraw from the conversation until, he doesn't withdraw his spirit until he knows that it won't do any good to talk. And one day he will. He'll turn out the lights. I've done everything I could. So I want you to say the last 10%, unless you realize, you know what? And it's going to sound something like this. I really want to resolve this. I don't think we're going to get there today. I don't think we're really hearing each other. I don't think we're making progress. So let's take the next step, which Matthew 18 says. If you go to them and you talk and it doesn't work, the next step is to stop talking and bring in a third party that can help you. So, you're going to run into obstacles. It's part of life. I pray to God I have conflicts tomorrow. Because if I don't, I'm dead. Right? We're going to wake up one day and not have any problems. Except maybe waking up and God and us reviewing this thing called life and seeing how I didn't confront my problems. So let's wake up to some problems tomorrow, and with his grace and his truth, and doing it the way he did it, let's go have some difficult conversations in a redemptive way where we can get to the promised land of whatever it is we're trying to find. God bless.
Inderdaad, soos Dr. Henry Cloud sê, kan hierdie difficult conversations, hierdie moeilike gesprekke, kan partykeer baie challenging wees, maar dat hulle so noodsaaklik is vir gesonde verhoudings. Ek dink, dis net so belangrik dat ons moet onthou dat wanneer ons in dit is, soos hy ook gesê het, en ek wil dit net weer uitlig, dat ons nie moet in dit ingaan om die ander persoon aan te val en om die ander persoon seer te maak of om in 'n gesprek in te gaan met 'n ander persoon met die doel daarvan dat ek die argument moet wen en dat dit moet wys dat ek die regte een is en die ander persoon die verkeerde een is nie. So, hy het vir ons bepaalde beginsels geleer en dit ook gestaal van en wat die woord, dit is my so amazing as ek baie keer na hom luister, nee, hoe hy teruggaan na Proverbs toe en hoe hy sê dat al die goed wat die wetenskap ons leer en wat die sielkunde en die psigiatrie ons leer, dit staan eintlik al reeds in die woord en die Here het dit al eintlik vir ons klaar gesê, nee. So, ek dink as ons hierdie beginsels gaan toepas, as ek kan aansluit net by so 2 goedjies, en alles is belangrik, nee, maar ek wil aansluit by 2 goed wat aansluit by wat ons ook so rukkie terug met mekaar gepraat het. Hy het gesê dat as ons in hierdie gesprekke ingaan met mekaar, dat ons respekvol moet optree, dat ons respek vir die ander persoon moet hê en dat ons op 'n vriendelike en 'n goeie manier met die ander persoon moet praat. En ek dink die Here het dit alreeds vir ons kom sê, hoe belangrik is dit om altyd ander mense te respekteer, selfs al verskil hulle vir jou, selfs al sien hulle goed anders as jy. En ek dink die groot ander ding, en as ons hierdie beginsel kan onthou, nee, dat ons moet fokus op die probleme in hierdie persoon nie. Dit is so ontsettend belangrik. Ek dink baie keer as ons veral as ons voel ons iemand het onregverdig teenoor ons opgetree of ons is seer gemaak, dan is ons geneig om die persoon aan te val, nee. En ons is geneig om te gaan vir die slaghaar, nee. Maar dit maak dit eintlik erger. En as ons kan leer om op die probleem te fokus en nie op die persoon nie, dan gaan so baie goed verander. En ek dink die ander ding wat hy gesê het wat so belangrik is, nee, is dat ons moet leer om regtig te luister. Baie keer luister ons nie na mekaar nie, of hoor ons net wat ons wil hoor. En as ons kan honest vir mekaar ruimte gee, om eerlik te wees, en ons probeer om te verstaan, en ons luister regtig na die ander persoon, dan sal dit so 'n groot verskil maak. En ja, soos hy sê, is dit challenging hierdie gesprekke, en ja, ek dink nie dis noodwendig altyd vir ons lekker nie, maar as ons dit benader met die regte gesindheid, as jy in 'n gesprek ingaan met iemand wat vir jou belangrik is, of 'n persoon gaan met jou in 'n gesprek en jy is vir daardie persoon, en ons kan mekaar dit laat verstaan, nee, en ons sê, okay, maar dis hoekom ons met mekaar praat, nie sodat ons die verhouding moet skade doen nie, maar juist sodat ons die verhouding sterker moet maak. Dink net wat gaan gebeur. En weet julle, my ervaring baie keer in die kerk, nee, is hierdie goed wat nie gebeur nie. Juist in die kerk waar mense mekaar moet met respek hanteer, waar mense mekaar moet vergewe, waar mense bereid moet wees om te gaan sit en eerlik met mekaar te praat, is dit juist die plek waar ons dit baie keer nie doen nie, of partykeer wanneer dit gebeur, al hierdie negatiewe goed gedoen word en dit verkeerd hanteer word en op die ou einde die verhouding soveel skade kry. En baie keer selfs in die kerk, of spesifiek ook in die kerk, nee, is ons bang dat iemand anders vir ons sal sê ons is verkeerd, of ons is bang ons word veroordeel, en daarom is dit so belangrik, dink ek, dat ek en jy binne in die kerk, as ons ook in gesprekke met mekaar moet gaan, en met mekaar moet praat oor goeders, dat ons regtig nooit dit vanuit 'n veroordelende houding sal doen nie. Dat ons nooit vir die ander persoon se slaghaar sal gaan nie, dat ons nooit 'n persoon se karakter sal aanval nie, want dit is nie wat die Here vir ons wil hê nie. So ek dink as ons gehoor het vandag net, dan het die Here vir ons beginsels geleer wat ons kan gaan toepas binne in ons huwelike, binne in ons verhoudings met ons kinders, met ons ouers, binne in verhoudings by die werk, vriendskapsverhoudings, verhoudings hier in die kerk. En ek dink as ons regtig moeite gaan doen, dan in plaas van verskoning, dat daar meer spanning kom, gaan daar meer openheid kom, gaan ons meer veilig voel by mekaar, gaan ons nader aan mekaar kom, en dit is uiteindelik die doel. Ek wil regtig vir jou sê, ek dink hierdie is een van daai boodskappe wat, een keer is nie genoeg om daarna te luister nie, want jy gaan nie al hierdie beginsels onthou nie. So ek sal jou aanbeveel om weer daarna te luister, of weer daarna te kyk, en soos ek sê, dalk bietjie 'n paar aantekeninge te maak, en regtig hieroor te dink, en die volgende keer as jy in 'n moeilike gesprek ingaan, met die regte gesindheid in te gaan, hierdie beginsels toe te pas, en ek glo dan gaan dit heeltemal anders verloop. So voordat ons afsluit, kom ons sit net so en ons maak net ons oë toe. Vader, ek wil vir U dankie sê dat U nie net vir ons inligting gee nie, dat U nie net vir ons kennis kom leer uit die woord nie, maar dat U vir ons leer hoe om te lewe. En dankie dat U wil hê dat ons die skills moet leer om die goed in die lewe reg te hanteer. Ons moet bely, Here, dat so baie keer doen ons presies die teenoorgestelde en hanteer ons die goed verkeerd. En baie keer hanteer ons dit verkeerd, Here, omdat ons ignorant is, omdat ons nie die goed reg verstaan nie, of omdat ons nog nooit hierdie goed geleer het wat ons vandag geleer het nie. En daarom sê ek vir U baie dankie vir wat U vandag vir ons geleer het. En Here, almal van ons is in verhoudings en ek wil vir U vra die volgende keer as ons in hierdie moeilike gesprekke met mense moet gaan wat vir ons kosbaar en belangrik is, dat ons dit sal doen as kinders van U met die regte gesindheid, dat ons mekaar reg sal hanteer en Here, dat ons dit van die begin af sal doen om die ding uit te sorteer, die probleem aan te spreek en ons nader aan mekaar te kry. En dat ons dit nie sal doen met die gesindheid van ek wil jou bykom, of ek wil jou veroordeel, of ek wil vir jou net wys hoe sleg is jy nie. Want dis nie wat U doen nie, dis nie wat U met ons doen nie. En daarom wil ek vir U dankie sê vir wat U vir ons vandag geleer het. En ek wil vir U vra, Gees van God wat in ons woon, herinner ons aan hierdie goed volgende keer as ons met iemand ernstig praat. Of volgende keer wanneer iemand met ons ernstig kom praat, Here. En ons so maklik vir offended raak, dat ons sal onthou wat U vir ons geleer het en dat ons daai beginsel sal gaan toepas. Ek bid dat dit ook binne in ons gemeente, dat ons hierdie selfe beginsel sal toepas wat U vanmôre vir ons geleer het. Ek wil nou vir U vra waar ons uit mekaar uitgaan. Here Jesus, bid ek U bloed af oor elkeen. Vader, ek bid U hand van bewaring oor elkeen en Heilige Gees, ek bid dat U in elkeen se lewe sal werk en sal beweeg in Jesus naam. Amen. Weereens dankie dat jy die dag met ons gedeel het, hierdie diens met ons gedeel het. My gebed is regtig dat hierdie boodskap 'n verskil vir jou gaan maak in jou verhoudings. En my gebed is dat die dag vir jou kosbaar sal wees, dat die res van die week vir jou kosbaar en mooi sal wees. Geniet die res van die dag.